Another topic that I hear often from the community, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Elena, is how do we handle some tough conversations? So tough conversations could be with coworkers, team members, could be with managers, could be sometimes even with family members and friends. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, curious if you have any thoughts on this.
Okay, so I'm gonna be a little bit philosophical here. Um, you know, I don't want to say there's no such thing as tough or not tough or tough easy or good bad whatever, right?
Yeah,
Because it's a perception. You know what I mean? What's tough for one person is not really tough for the other person, right? And so it's kind of hard to view it this way, right? I mean, everybody has tough conversations or the way they perceive them to be as tough, right? The thing is, you have to understand that is your perception and reframe it, right? Reframe it in your mind. And as soon as that mindset shift happens, it's no longer a dreadful conversation. It's more of an educational conversation, right? This is a conversation now about you, about your core, about you communicating your core, right? And about communicating your beliefs, right? And it's about getting buy-in and clarity with the person that you communicating with. So first things to do is make sure that you get rid of the word tough, right? And I mean, again, you don't want to like say it's not there. I mean, it's obviously there. These are your feelings. You absolutely should acknowledge that, but
right.
reframe it into more something that's productive, right? Something that you're um, able to resolve, right? It's a tough conversation is a
Hmm.
conversation regardless, right?
Right.
So treat it as a conversation, but you still have to, shift how you feel about it, right? You know, sometimes, like I said, if you're preparing for a tough conversation, maybe it's, a centering exercise, or maybe it's a meditation that gets you out of your head and out of your feelings and helps you center as you approach that. So you're, approaching it more from the pragmatic balanced standpoint, right, versus from an emotional, because ultimately when we react with emotion, we're not in control. When you want to have a tough conversation, you want to be really clear of mind and you want to have control over your thought process, right, and over your emotions, right, and you want to make sure that you're able to communicate clearly, not emotionally driven. I mean, the thing with tough conversations, frequently they, come out with a burst and we then run out and then we regret everything we've done, right? So the point is that you have to approach any conversations like that, with respect for yourself and your opponent.
Hmm.
As I may call that person that, right? Or the person that you're going to have the tough conversation with. So first and foremost, like I said, reframe, right? Then for yourself, decide what is it that you stand for and what is important to you, like what is your where are your values in that, right? The tough conversation is obviously happening because there's some form of a disagreement where there is clearly not an alignment. Maybe it's not an alignment on values, maybe it's not an alignment on direction, action, whatever it might be, right? The point is that there's a misalignment. So you have to be real clear as to what's important for you and how important is that for you. I mean, is this something that you're willing to negotiate, or is this something that is absolutely 100% what it is? So that's great. So now you're real clear on what you want and what is, negotiable and what's not. So then you're proceeding, with actually communicating the truth. And that is the hardest thing to do because we're most afraid as people of rejection. And again, this is a very primitive, fear, right? Because if we're rejected, we're no longer part of the community. So we don't survive, we die, and that's the end, right?
Hmm.
So it's understanding that that's where this is coming from, right? So, and bringing it back to communicating your truth, you know, it's entirely possible that you will disagree, but it will not be the end of the world, right? Otherwise this would be a negotiable thing, right? So if something is not negotiable, you have to communicate your truth, and you have to do it with the most empathetic way. Sometimes you have to say no to somebody, right? And it's a no, and then this is it, and just respect that. But you can communicate that and in the most compassionate way, right? You don't need to just, cut somebody off and be that, right? The point is, you still have to validate the other person's feelings if you want to continue that relationship, right?
Mhm.
So this is what we're talking about. The relationship is super important. Find the positive ways in that, right? So, okay, so you disagree with this. This is your, authentic response. You said that this is, this way, right? You communicated this empathetically, and then allow for that person to respond. I mean, give the person the capability to feel all the feels, right? And acknowledge that and be okay with that, right? Because we usually blow right past that, and because we just can't deal with other people's emotions, because oh my god, like how I don't know how to deal with this, right? So allow for that space and prepare for that ahead of time. Pause, literally just pause, and allow the person to react, right? Whatever the person says to you, whatever they will say, and most likely, they will, acknowledge their frustration, or maybe disagreement or whatever. And then at that point, I mean, if and this is something you certainly have to do a little bit ahead of time, think about what you can offer instead. Is there something you can offer instead? Maybe you don't want to collaborate with somebody on something, but maybe there's another way somebody can make a valuable contribution, because if they wanted to work with you, or they wanted to do something with you, they obviously expressing an effort which is not aligning with you over here.
Mhm.
But think about where would you align, and communicate that alignment to that person, simply because it may not be over here, but it may be over here. And allow for that opportunity to continue the relationship. So you're not cutting off the opportunity to interact, right? But you're looking for a future in, or a future collaboration. And then, I mean, sometimes people might surprise you, so you want to give that opportunity. You want to think about where else might this work, or how else might this work. I mean, maybe if it's a relationship with your spouse, we're so comfortable in just cutting things off. But hold on for a minute and evaluate what would work, right? Propose something, right? And I think that will go a long way. I mean, if you're in, if this is a professional relationship, think of how else you can collaborate. I mean, what else can you do? Maybe you have an introduction to somebody, or maybe it's a smaller project that this person can do for you. So allow for that, and you will be surprised how grateful people will be that you gave them the honest opinion, but you see them as valuable, right? So offering them some kind of value, right, even though it may not be the right fit right here right now, but you're doing something here, will go a very long way. So I think that's probably the way to go. I mean, does that make sense? There was a
Yeah,
really long explanation here. So
I think it's super valuable. Let me kind of summarize the steps that someone can take away as like actionable steps. Like, one is make sure yourself is like centered, and you can do that by possibly like meditation, other way that like help yourself to get calm before you get into a conversation. And then kind of like change your mindset and say like, okay, it's a conversation. Don't presumably say like it's going to be tough. It might not be, or even if it is, it's okay.
it's an opportunity, right? It's an
It is, yeah.
opportunity to exchange, your thoughts, and it's also opportunity for you to voice your truth. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And then during the conversation, kind of like give the other person a chance to express their feelings, if there's feeling there, and acknowledge that if needed. And also take it as a way to find a middle ground if you have kind of misalignment, and then find a way to get middle ground there. Did I?
And search for an opportunity to do
Mhm.
something forward. So you're not just finding the middle ground, but you're also, because sometimes there may not be a middle ground. I
Mm,
mean, in relationships, maybe it's more so, but in more professional relationships, it's finding for another opportunity
mm.
potentially. And I mean, if such does not exist, maybe it's a different introduction. So that's great summary.